Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live stream. My name is Rebecca. I'm the founder of Hike Like a Woman. Here at Hike Like a Woman, we lead guided trips, group trips, women's group trips, adventure trips from Kilimanjaro to Costa Rica to Yellowstone. And tonight, I'm just going to give you our Yellowstone trip report. I traveled to Yellowstone National Park 2 weeks ago with a group of amazing women. And tonight I'm just going to share our experience in Yellowstone National Park. So I'm glad you're tuning in. Here's the deal. Even if you don't join us for a group trip, an outdoor adventure together, at least if you pop in, I'm going to give you a really epic 3-day itinerary if you have 3 days to spend in Yellowstone. So let's continue on. So my name, as I said before, my name's Rebecca. And here at Hike Like a Woman, we lead outdoor adventure trips. And here's what you need to know about booking a trip with us. First of all, when you book a trip with us, you get me. I'm on every single trip that we lead. So I don't just organize a trip and then hand you off to a stranger. You get me on every single trip. And I think that's important to know because a lot of organizations that are leading adventures for women, you don't necessarily know who the trip leader is going to be. So that's me. We carefully vet all of our guiding companies. We used to be guides and we used to have permits and we used to have a van and all the gear, stuff like that. Now we contract out to guiding companies for all of our trips. So we carefully vet them to make sure that they are leading trips that are up to our very extremely high standards. Also, 30% of our trip participants are repeat customers. That's really cool because when you book a trip with us and you go on a trip with me and you have a ton of fun, makes you want to go on another trip. And also, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more detail on our presentation tonight as we get going, but we never leave anyone behind on any of our trips. Sometimes women will say, oh, I'd love to book a trip with you, but I feel like I'm too slow of a hiker. I feel like I wouldn't be able to keep up. I feel like I'm not fit enough. Well, the truth is I don't ever leave anyone behind. I spent a lot of years in the United States Army, and that's just how it is. So it doesn't matter how slow you hike, how fit you think you are or are not. I'm never, ever going to leave you behind on any adventure. Okay, so let's get into Yellowstone. That's just a little bit about us here at Hike Like a Woman and the trips that we lead. So when you join us for a trip, the first thing that happens is after you book the trip, you put down your deposit, you are put into our community Slack channel. So Slack is, it's a platform that a lot of organizations use to communicate with their employees, but I use it as a platform to communicate with people who are going on our trips. So the ramp up to our Yellowstone adventure began, of course, with Shannon there, right on the airplane. Hi, Shannon. Good to see you in the comments. So we're talking in the Slack channel. We're getting to know each other. We're coordinating flight information, all those things. And so that just helps build the community before we actually even get to meet in person. So we got to know each other in our Slack community, and then it was time to all meet together. A few women flew in early, and they actually went on some hikes. Everybody flew into Bozeman or drove. So they went on some hikes, and we went out to dinner the night before, but the trip officially kicked off at the Bozeman Airport. There you can see our motley crew there getting ready to head into the park. After we all met, we grabbed some additional snacks in Bozeman before we hit the road, and we drove through beautiful Gallatin Canyon. I grew up in Bozeman, so Gallatin Canyon is this gorgeous drive that goes from Bozeman to West Yellowstone, Montana, and West Yellowstone was where we headquartered, kind of where we had our base camp for the duration of the trip. There's also a great Yellowstone sign. You actually drive through a portion of the park before you get to West Yellowstone. That's like an ungated portion of the park. So there's a great sign there. Of course, in true Hike Like a Woman tradition, this was our third trip to Yellowstone. So we had to stop and do our obligatory Yellowstone sign picture. But as you can see, we were all pretty stoked to get to camp, get things all set up. So we arrived at camp, and Lana, our guide, instructed everybody on how to set up our tents, and we set up our campsite. Our campsite was not ideal this trip. We were right up against a highway, so it was a little bit loud, but it was kind of like some white noise, helping us sleep better at night, I suppose. But you can see we had a pretty luxurious campsite with toilets. We had showers. We had a sink to wash dishes after we cooked. And so when you go on a camping trip with us, if it's not like a backcountry trip like Kilimanjaro or Peru, we try to pick campgrounds that also have some of those facilities that we all enjoy, especially after a hard day of hiking. So we got camp set up. We did some hike like a woman tattoos, which is getting to be a fun tradition on our hikes as well. And you can see Leslie there getting all tatted up. And then I don't know what everybody's doing in this picture, but I had to include it. It looks like everybody's getting ready to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but not really. I think we were watching Lana, our guide, cook dinner for us or something, but I thought this was a hilarious picture, so I added it. But you can see more shots of our campsite there. That night we had some delicious stir fry, and then the next morning we got all set up and ready to go. And this is where the trip gets good. Okay, so we've made it to our campsite. We survived the first night. Now we're getting ready to head into Yellowstone. So we drove through the west entrance of the park. And then something really cool happened. Before we even got to our first destination, we ran across a massive field of bison, or a massive herd of bison. They were all just hanging out in this field. And this picture's a little blurry because it was foggy. So we got to see these gigantic, beautiful, majestic animals through the fog. And it was such a beautiful start to our actual Yellowstone adventure. So we got out at a very safe distance, and we took some pictures and some videos of the bison and just watched them. And it was a really beautiful way to kick off this trip. Then we all gathered together here for our very first hike, which was up to Fairy Falls, about 1.5 miles to get to Fairy Falls and back. But we did a little detour through Grand Prismatic, which is the third largest hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. So I have a few pictures of our hike here. If Yellowstone is on your bucket list, if you've never been to Yellowstone, or maybe if you've been to Yellowstone a bunch and never bothered to do Fairy Falls because it seems kind of like, it's actually a pretty great hike, and I highly recommend it. So there we are at Fairy Falls. We were really excited to see this gigantic waterfall. The photo does not do it justice. It goes up another, 40 feet, 30 feet. I don't really know. But there we are at Fairy Falls. And then on the way back down, we stopped at Grand Prismatic. So if you see behind us, you can see this beautiful hot springs, and it has these colored rings. One thing that's really cool is if Grand Prismatic Springs is on your agenda for your next trip to Yellowstone, don't go to the boardwalks. Instead, go up to the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook. It's just a short little hike to get to this overlook, and you'll be able to see the entire springs, and it's just so gorgeous. All those colors you see are actually caused by bacteria, and it's just really beautiful. So definitely put Grand Prismatic Springs on your list, and it's better during the afternoon. So if you can catch it in the afternoon, I feel, and so does Lana, our guide, who's like the Yellowstone expert. I think it's better to see it in the afternoon. So go check it out in the afternoon. Then we did everyone's favorite thing. We went on to visit Old Faithful and walk around Old Faithful, the boardwalks. Some people walked up to the viewpoint there. But here's the thing. One of my favorite things about Yellowstone is when everybody is just silently waiting for Old Faithful to erupt. Everybody's got their cameras out, their phones out, they're ready to go. And then there's like this audible in the air as soon as the geyser starts to erupt. Well, this was interesting, and I've seen Old Faithful a lot, but it was actually about 30 minutes late erupting. So Old Faithful typically erupts, every 70 to 90 minutes, give or take 20 minutes, a half an hour. Like it's quite predictable, but not like precision predictable. Well, she erupted about a half an hour late. And so we were treated to this magnificent geyser. And it was like the biggest eruption I've ever seen. And I think it's because there was some extra pressure there underground, waiting to burst after that long delay. But because of the delay, people started leaving the boardwalk. and just like giving up on Old Faithful. But our group did not give up on Old Faithful because we wanted to see her erupt. We actually got to see her erupt twice, which was really beautiful. And then this is another, I think that's Beehive Geyser. I don't quite remember. But if you, there's so much more to see in the Old Faithful area besides just Old Faithful. So it's definitely worth walking around, checking everything out. Um, After we finally got back to camp, that was a pretty long day. We had that big hike to Fairy Falls, Grand Prismatic Spring, Old Faithful. We did a few other geyser areas. We got back to camp, and these girls were twinning. Look at those coordinated outfits. But we got back to camp. We had another delicious dinner. We got a little bit of rest. And then we woke up the next morning. And yeah, Amanda, yes, it was Beehive. Okay, I wanted to make sure. Thank you, Amanda. It was so beautiful. And Beehive, that geyser just lasts a really long time. So anyway, this is us on the next day of our trip. That is Gibbon Falls behind us, it's kind of just like a roadside attraction, but it's very beautiful. Stop at Gibbon Falls. You can see our group here. I got to say one thing about our group. Here's what I noticed about our Yellowstone group, and we have a few of you in the comments here, both on YouTube and over on Facebook. This group was all about pictures. It was like the most photogenic group in the entire world. And sometimes when I'm on a trip and I'm like, okay, guys, it's time for a group picture, everyone's like, I don't want to take another group picture. It's like teenagers at a family reunion. This group was all about pictures. So we have a ton of awesome group pictures for this group. And I'm excited to share them with you tonight because this was a good looking group. I mean, look at that. And they were so fantastic. I think on this group, we had, I don't know, 3 nurses. We had 3 cancer survivors. It was just a really fascinating and diverse group. And we had a lot to talk about on every single hike. Okay, so then the thing on the schedule today that I was so excited about was seeing the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. This is another must-see place, and the way to see it is on trails. So we actually did the Clear Lake Artist Point loop. It's about a 3.5-mile loop, and you start on the opposite end of the Grand Canyon. So you start from the lower parking lot, and then you hike through this beautiful meadow, and then you get to this gorgeous lake. So this is Clear Lake. I know a very unique name there, Clear Lake. It is extremely clear. It smells like sulfur. It's just a really beautiful lake. And then you continue to walk on the side of this lake, and then you go through this beautiful, like another little small geyser basin where it almost feels like you're walking on the moon or something. And I forgot to add a picture of that. Anyway, it's beautiful. And then you get to one of my favorite lakes in Yellowstone. This is Lily Pad Lake. And it's just so fun. It's a big lake, lily pads everywhere. You're coming through the trees, you're getting out of the trees, and you're almost to the point where you can see the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. But this is just like a really beautiful, beautiful place. And then boom, there it is. Then you get to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. You got to look in all directions because it's beautiful facing forward. You got to turn around and get the other view to the other side. Like, it's amazing. I'm not going to talk too much about the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone because I'm not a geologist, but it's gorgeous. And I think the smiles in this picture show how enthusiastic and how excited we were to be at this point, at this moment. And you know, one thing that we say here at Hike Like a Woman all the time is we always start off the trip as strangers and we finish the trip as friends. Well, with this group, and like most of the groups that we lead into the backcountry, you know, we started off as strangers, but it really didn't take us long to become friends at all. And that's what I love about these trips. Just the friendships that are formed. You know, when you're in the backcountry, when you're on the trail with somebody, you can have these conversations that are so authentic and they're so deep. And we realize that we have differences, but there's actually so much that we have in common just with our mutual love of the outdoors. And I love this picture because it's 2 women who didn't know each other before the trip. And you can just see the smiles, you can see they're having fun. And it's just a really special moment. Okay, so after we spent most of the day checking out the Grand Canyon, we still had a little bit of energy in us, and we still wanted to see some things before we headed out back to our campsite in West Yellowstone. And so we decided to check out the Norris Geyser Basin. This is a beautiful geyser basin. There's boardwalks everywhere, and it was a fun stop. I haven't been to this particular place since I was a child, and I forgot how beautiful and stunning it was. And so for future trips to Yellowstone, I'm going to make sure that this is on the itinerary because it wasn't on our original itinerary. It was just like a bonus adventure, and it needs to be included because it's so special there. And then we got back to camp, but something happened on our very last hike. And you see our friend there, there's an ice pack on this knee. And this is important because I'm going to talk about what happened after this in a little bit. But sometimes things happen. And so we do our best to make sure that everybody is taken care of and that if anyone's sick or hurt, they're well taken care of. So we get back to camp, we take care of this injury, we have another delicious dinner, and then Amanda's on the live stream here, and there she is demonstrating a few different techniques for going to the bathroom outdoors, which is always a fun thing to talk about when you're preparing dinner with a group of women. So if you want us to share with you a video with all of our different bathroom techniques, you should let me know because I'm happy to drop a video of this exact moment that is hilarious. Okay, so we have another delicious dinner. And then I want to take a second just to shout out Lana, our guide here. So Lana's there in the green hat and the purple puffy jacket. And one thing that's really great is Lana is an incredible guide, and she's guided 3 trips for us here at Hike Like a Woman. And if I could just have Lana be my guide on every single trip, I would, because she is extremely competent in the outdoors and extremely professional, and she knows her stuff. So this is my call. This is kind of my call here as a woman who's an outdoor professional. You know, Amanda's in the comments. She's also a guide and she leads guided trips. Our industry needs more women, and we need more women like Lana who just have an incredible ability to take a group of women who don't know each other and form them into a team and a cohesive team that can do really hard things together. And so if you're out there and if you're thinking, I might be ready for a career change, or maybe if you're younger and you're like, oh man, I'd love to have a career in the outdoor industry, please reach out because I'd love to connect you with guides like Lana, with guides like Amanda, and share those stories about how to actually have a career in the outdoors, because I'm telling you, it's possible to have a career in the outdoors. So that's my plug for let's encourage our girls to grow up and be really kick-ass outdoor adventure guides. Okay, off my soapbox. We are on to the next day. So this is the day that we had all been waiting for. This is kind of like our capstone event. This is like our graduation event. This is our climb to the top of Mount Washburn. Mount Washburn is such a fun hike. It's about 6.5, 7 miles long. You climb about 1,400 feet. On this sign here, you see that there was some bear activity in the area, both grizzly bears and black bears in Yellowstone National Park. So you can see that the trail had been closed, but was now open. And we've seen bear activity on this trail a bunch in the past. But with this group, we were not going to see any bears because they were a really fun group and we had a ton of fun together. So we started our climb up to the top of Mount Washburn. I should say that the summit of Washburn is just over 10,000 feet. I honestly think anybody can do this hike if they go slowly, if you're healthy, if you're drinking water, if you're eating well. So this is a great hike. Put it on your Yellowstone National Park agenda for sure. Okay, so there you can see we're getting excited for this trail. This is Team Pole Pole. I hiked with these ladies and we had so much fun. Eventually, we made it to the summit, and it actually didn't take us as long as I thought. to make it to the summit because we just went slow and steady, kind of applying those lessons that I had learned on Kilimanjaro just a few months ago. So we get to the summit of Mount Washburn. Once again, you see all those smiles at the summit. This group was incredible. We're just over 10,000 feet. It was just a beautiful day to be on the top, and the weather was really nice. You never know what to expect in September when you're in Yellowstone National Park, but the weather was really, really good. So we took some pictures of the summit there. You can see the benchmark there. If you're the kind of person like me who always likes to have a picture of the benchmark of every mountain that you climb, that's always fun. So there we are getting the benchmark. And then we headed down the mountain in record speed because we wanted to go to West Yellowstone to check out the Wolf and Grizzly Discovery Center, which is actually a place where they rescue bears that would otherwise be euthanized, bears who've had too much human contact that wouldn't be able to make it on their own. So we went and we watched the bears, we watched the wolves, we saw some river otters, some cool birds, and then we went and we had our final dinner at a restaurant. We were all very excited to eat at a restaurant. This restaurant is called the Slippery Otter. They have quite the beer selection, and we were excited to eat at a restaurant so that we didn't have to do dishes, because that was the worst part of this trip, was doing the dishes after every single meal. But there you can see the gang, everybody's there, nothing but smiles. This group did not stop smiling the entire trip. And then it was time to hit the sack, go to bed, get a good night's sleep. And then we woke up the next morning, and it was time to say our farewells and head back to the airport. You can see we included Lana, our guide, in this trip. She's all decked out in Hike Like a Woman swag. She's ready for another trip with us. And I'm actually working with her to plan a trip to Alaska where she will be our guide. So stay tuned. That's probably going to happen. If not next fall, then spring of 2026. So we loaded up the van, and this was a really special picture that we took as we were loading up the van. I think it was Shannon. I don't remember. I don't know who's to blame for this picture, but everyone just went in for this gigantic group hug. And it was just a really special moment to share with these women, once again confirming, like, we start as strangers, we end as friends, and sometimes on these trips, the bond becomes even closer than friendships. And that was definitely what this experience in Yellowstone with this group of women was like. There you can see Sarah. We call her Sarah because she has an H at the end of Sarah. Nothing but smiles. So do you remember a few slides ago when I showed Jen, who had the injury on her knee, and she was sitting at camp with the ice pack? One thing that was really special was the next day, I'm driving home. So I'm driving from Bozeman, Montana back to Laramie, Wyoming. I'm in the middle of a 9-hour drive. I'm super bored. I'd listened to all my podcasts, and all of a sudden, my phone dings. So I push messages on the console on my phone, and I get this message from Jen that says, I just climbed Mount Washburn. So the day the day the trip ended, or it might have been the day after. No, it was the day the trip ended. Jennifer did it. She felt like her knee was strong enough to summit Washburn. She did it. She did it all by herself. She did it alone. And I was so proud of her for just like going for it. Even after the trip had ended, just on her own. She did it on her way back to Wisconsin. So Jen, we're proud of you, and we're proud of you for getting this hike done. It was just like really special to get that message. But like with all of our trips, it didn't end there. It continued. Like, the conversation with this group of women just continued in our Slack page. People are still talking about this trip in our Slack group. And it was just so much fun to connect with these great women, and to connect in a place that is so special like Yellowstone National Park. I want to share this slide for a few reasons. There's two pictures that I really want to point out here. The first here, you can see our friend Tracy, who just wasn't feeling well, and she made the really tough decision to not get to the top of Mount Washburn. I want to bring this up because I'm proud of Tracy because sometimes when we're with a group of people, it's sometimes we can just push ourselves too much. And knowing our limits and knowing when it's time to go back and knowing when it's important and just like being able to listen to our bodies is so important. But Tracy did not leave that mountain without tears because we were all sad that she was sick and couldn't make it to the top with us. So Tracy, like shout out to you. You're incredible. And then the other thing I want to point out is you can see we had some blisters on this trip, and that sucks. Blisters totally sucks. But these women who even had blisters still powered through to get to the summit of Mount Washburn, and they did it. So it's just like this careful balance, right, between knowing when to push your limit and knowing when to just call it a day and be thankful that you're there and be thankful for the moment. I also want to mention that we always take care of you. We took care of Jen. We took care of those blisters because you're all so important to me. And especially when you have the courage to sign up for a trip and go into the backcountry with a group that you don't even know, like that takes so much courage. And so to all the women who were on this trip with me, thank you so much for just this experience that was so life-giving, so refreshing, and so beautiful. It was just really cool. So now I have to do the thing where I tell you about the future trips that we're hosting. And I have a hard time talking about this because I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, like go buy a trip. But I want to say that experiences like what happened at Yellowstone happen on all of our trips. And so I'm just going to briefly tell you what's coming up just in case, maybe you feel like you want to go on a trip with me. Maybe you want to save your money and put a little bit aside in the budget so eventually you can go on a trip with me. That's awesome. So we're headed to Iceland in February. That's our next open trip. That trip is sold out, but we have a wait list. So go check that out. This is more of a van tour. So we're going to stay in hotels. We're going to drive around in a van and we're going to check out a lot of cool stuff in Iceland. We're headed to Costa Rica and in April. So April 2025. This trip is almost sold out. We have 3 more spots available. So if you're interested in Costa Rica, it's going to sell out probably within the next week or so. So let me know or head to our website, HIKELIKEAWOMAN.com, and book that trip. This is an adventure trip. So we're staying in hotels and river lodges that are very comfortable. And we're going whitewater rafting, zip lining, hiking, canyoning, all of the fun stuff. So that is an adventure trip. It's not a hiking trip. We do a little bit of hiking, but mostly it's like really fun adventure. Then we're headed to Southern Utah in June. This is where we're going to be camping. This trip is going to be the most similar trip to the Yellowstone trip. We're going to be seeing 4 different national parks. So we're actually going to start in Las Vegas and we're going to just hit national parks along the way. And we're going to end our trip in Salt Lake City. So Southern Utah in June, we still have a lot of spots available for that. And then Kilimanjaro. So Amanda, who's in the chat and was just in Yellowstone with me, is headed to Kilimanjaro in next August. Kilimanjaro, I can talk about Kilimanjaro all day long. If it's on your bucket list, go book it. Like do it now. Don't wait till you're 1 year older. Like go book that trip now. HIKELIKEAWOMAN.com is where you can find all that information. And then I have a surprise. If you are still here, still watching the live stream, you might know what those mountains are, or you might not know what those mountains are. But those mountains are where we are going to be headed October 18th through the 25th, 2025. That's all I'm going to tell you, except that the opening to book this particular trip and all that information is going to be out in the next month or so. But here's the deal. If you've already gone on a trip with me, booking is open for that very special trip. This was actually a trip that was requested by several of the women who climbed Kilimanjaro with me back in June. So this is a special request trip. It's going to be amazing. So get excited about that one. And then the other thing too is I want to make myself available for anyone who wants to hop on a call to have questions asked about any of our adventure trips. Maybe you're training for Kilimanjaro, but you're not doing a Kilimanjaro trip with me. That's cool. I'm happy to talk to you about anything: hiking, camping, backpacking, adventure travel. anything at all. So I've opened up my schedule. I'm available 3 times a week if I'm not leading a trip, just to hop on quick 15-minute calls. So if you're interested in like just chatting with me, and you have questions about a trip or you just want to know something, go ahead and book a trip with me. You can find booking information over at our website, hikelikeawoman.com. And then that's where you can find us. So that kind of wraps up my little trip report about Yellowstone. Let me give you just a quick update about what's going on behind the scenes here, and then what you can expect next and what you'll see on our next live stream. So I'm working really hard on our podcast right now. And last week I published a podcast episode that was like the worst mistakes that I've ever made as an outdoor leader, as a trip leader, as a guide. So if you're into podcasts, go to HIKELIKEAWOMAN.com and check out our podcast. That episode is kind of blowing up like gangbusters. So go check that out if you're into podcasts. And the other thing is I'm headed to Peru. Actually, first I'm going to a reunion with the Yellowstone National Park girls from last year. And then I'm headed to Peru in 13 days. And we're going to be hiking the Salcantay Trail with 13 women. We're super excited about this trek. So we're going to have another trip report when I get back mid-October from that trip. And you're going to want to tune in because I don't know how this Peru adventure is going to go down. I've never been to Peru. It's going to be very exciting. So you're going to be wanting to tune in to that. And the schedule for that is up on our YouTube channel underneath the little live tab. So you can find out when to tune in for that trip report. Okay, that's all I have to say. If you're a Hike Like a Woman trip participant from this year, in the comments, thank you so much for chiming in. You guys are awesome. And for the rest of you, if you feel like you want to book a trip with us, hikelikeawoman.com, hop on a call with me, whatever. I'm here for you, anything you need. And I will let you go have a rest. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks so much, y'all. Thanks so much. I will see you all later. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.